Well, Prime Minister, thank you very much for coming along. We've got to start with this brain fade about the football team you support. Is it West Ham or Aston Villa?
I've been an Aston Villa fan all my life. I don't know what happened. I literally opened my mouth and I was going off-piste about the fact you can, in Britain, be a supporter of the West Indies, a supporter of Manchester United and a supporter of Team GB. And I was then busking about other things you could support. And I don't know what happened to me. It's just one of those things. I went past the West Ham Stadium.
Was it
wasn't on the script. No. I was going off script to add to the examples. And I suppose it's just the campaign. But by the time you've made as many speeches as I have on this campaign, all sorts of funny things start popping out of your mouth.
But I must say it started, the old social media going, and especially the football fans saying, how can you forget the football team you support? You'll forgive me just asking you a few questions
about I'm not going to go
about Aston Villa. You must remember the European Cup final. You must remember watching the European Cup final as a kid.
I do. That's why I became a Villa fan. I'm not doing quiz time because I'll get them all wrong, but that's not what I'm here to talk about.
But you won the European Cup.
That's why I became a Villa fan, because of my uncle was involved in the club, and back in the early 80s with all those successes, and Andy Gray and Brian Little, and that was what got me going. But I don't go very often. In fact, I haven't been for years and years. But I try and keep up, and I'm hoping we're going to escape the relegation zone, which we're out of now. And obviously the FA Cup final is.
But you did say in
exciting.
2001 in the House that you weren't actually a football fan. You think? I mean, you said in the debate with Andy Burnham.
I'm not a regular attender. I used to play football as a kid. My son plays football, and I try and sort of keep up with what's happening in the Premier League and see how Villa are doing. But when they get snug in the middle of the table, I tend to sort of back off a bit. When we get close to the bottom, I get nervous. But I don't know what happened.
I know it's not the most important issue, but if your team has won the European Cup only once and you support it, you'd know when it was, wouldn't you?
Yes, but I don't want to.
Do you know when it was?
Early 80s. I'm not going to give you a date because I'll get it wrong.
And one goal, and you know who scored it?
You're wasting your precious interview time.
OK, it must be, and it is. It's Peter With. Prime Minister, let's talk about the big policy announcement then. Your tax cut law for those on the minimum wage. You're saying it's your number one priority.
Well, what we're saying is that we're saying in our Queen's speech it will be, if we're elected, it will be all about the economy. Because in the end, the economy isn't lines on a graph. It is people's jobs, people's pay. Our strong economy means a strong NHS. A strong economy means good schools. A strong economy means we can build the houses that young people want to buy and own for themselves. It's at the heart of everything. It's the heart of the election campaign. And we're going to focus on that, but to the exclusion of everything else.
There are some puzzling aspects of this tax cut law for those on the minimum wage, namely the fact that the tax-free threshold is
£10,600, and it's going to go to £12,500.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and the minimum wage as of October the 1st, you've announced, is going to be
£6.70
an hour, and it's for those on 30 hours a week, which equals £201 a week. £201 times, I know this is complicated, but it's important, isn't it, to people on the minimum wage? £201 a week times 52 is £10,452. So you're already getting that amount tax-free.
What people need is a guarantee that whatever happens to the minimum wage, and it's going to keep going up if our economy keeps succeeding, that you'll always be outside the tax threshold, no matter how fast the minimum wage goes up. I want to see it go through.
So what you're saying is you can't be trusted on a promise, so you have to pass legislation so as you will keep your own pledge.
Well, it's an absolute guarantee, because what might happen...
Well, why can't we take your word for it?
Well, I'm giving you my word and a law. And also, this will bind future governments, which I think is important, because otherwise you might have a government that comes along that freezes the tax threshold while the minimum wage is increasing and draws people into income tax. But it's very important.
But there's even more about this, though, isn't it? Because, of course, it's the Lib Dems' idea originally. You said in the leaders' debate in 2010 that raising this tax threshold wouldn't work.
No, I didn't.
That it was too expensive.
I said that I wanted to cut. I said I wanted to cut.
You said
taxes.
It was unaffordable.
Well, I said I wanted to cut taxes, and this has been the right way to cut taxes in this Parliament. With a Conservative Chancellor and a Conservative Prime Minister, we've taken 3 million of the lowest paid people out of tax altogether. If we get to £12,500, we'll take another 1 million people out of tax. And this guarantee is important, because no matter how fast the minimum wage rises, we will always have to keep lifting that tax threshold to keep people outside of it.
But those on the minimum wage will not pay tax. They already don't pay the tax. So you're saying, effectively, vote for something you already have. It's like Arthur Daly selling someone their own car.
Listen, Dermot, I think you're being ridiculous with respect. What it means is that you know, if you're on minimum wage and you work 30 hours a week under the Conservatives, you'll never be dragged into the income tax net. That's an incredibly important guarantee, because that minimum wage is going to go on increasing.
It's not a tax cut.
Well, we are cutting tax. It is a tax cut.
Not if you're on the minimum wage, because you're not paying tax.
Well,
as we said, we're going around in circles.
It's a tax cut for 30 million people, because as we raise the tax threshold from £10,600 to £12,500, that is a tax cut for 30 million people. It takes another million people out of tax, and it's a guarantee to people on minimum wage that no matter what happens to the minimum wage, you'll never pay income tax. Those are great, important
But you will have
guarantees.
deductions, won't you, Prime Minister? Even on that 30 hours a week on the minimum wage, you will still have deductions by the state.
Well, you have national insurance and such like that.
How much?
Well, I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but
it's very important to people.
Well, it is
every pound counts.
Well, of course, we cut national insurance because Labour were proposing the jobs tax, a national insurance increase, when we got in 5 years ago. And that was our first act, was to stop that jobs tax coming in, to stop that national insurance increase. And we've gone on and cut national insurance so that if you're an employer and you take on someone over between 18 and 24, they pay no national insurance whatsoever.
Yes, but can you tell someone who's working 30 hours on the minimum wage, your number one priority, how much they will pay in deductions to the state per year? Have you thought this policy through? Are you across it?
Yes, of course I have.
Well, how much will they pay?
Well, I haven't got the figure for national insurance, but the point is we're guaranteeing
£287 a year.
But the key point is it's only the Conservatives that can say to people that we're not going to put up national insurance. We're not going to put up income tax. Why? Because we've said we're going to make the savings in welfare, in departmental spending, to get on top of our deficit, eradicate it altogether. Whereas the other parties are all saying they're going to put up taxes. So, frankly, the question for me about national insurance deductions is no one needs to worry. They're not going to go up under the Conservatives because our plans are fully paid for.
But you're still earning not an awful lot of money, and the state is still taking some of it. Does this illustrate this kind of policy that you actually rather threadbare when it comes to policies, and that kind of tells us more about the campaign, that it's rather lacklustre? You've heard that accusation, and it's negative.
I don't accept that at all. This is a very positive policy. What we're saying is we're going to raise the personal tax threshold, we're going to raise the 40p tax threshold, so you don't start paying it till you're earning £50,000. We've got 30 hours of free childcare for the parents of 3 and 4-year-olds. These are all about the same thing, which is building a strong economy, very positive vision, where people who work hard and do the right thing get rewarded. And to me, people talk about this campaign. There's nothing more positive than saying to people, let's get another 2 million jobs. Let's fund another 3 million apprenticeships. Let's let you keep more of your own money to spend as you choose. Let's build those homes that you want to live in. Let's make sure there's good schools for your children. That is the most positive vision there could possibly be. Security at every stage of your life. And that's what our manifesto has been all about.
Let's turn to the SNP, though. Is it positive continually attacking Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond as being puppet masters and having Ed Miliband in their top pocket and things like that? Nicola Sturgeon's been thanking you for making them relevant and putting the SNP centre stage. You're endangering the union.
No, I'm simply pointing out a fact of this election, which is it's become apparent, and you can ask any expert, that Labour is likely to suffer very badly at the hands of the SNP in Scotland. And that has consequences for everyone in the rest of the country, because it means Ed Miliband can only form a government with the assistance of the SNP. Now, that, I think, is a very disturbing development for our country, because the SNP don't come down to Westminster to make our government stronger or make our country stronger. They come down to Westminster to break it up. And I think it is the right and responsible thing to point out the dangers of that.
Are you angry about it? Are you angry about them?
Well, it worries me what would happen. But the point is, I don't just make this as an observation. I have an answer, which is there are only 23 more seats the Conservatives need to win to form an overall majority to stop this from happening.
Right, you're not going to win them in Scotland, though, are you? And from the last,
we're hoping to. Yes, we have. We have target seats. We have target seats.
You've got one, and you might not hold on to that.
We have also other target seats in Scotland.
But the problem is it not Prime Minister? The problem is it not Prime Minister? Is that post the referendum there is that the yes vote held together, that's the SNP, and the no vote is obviously fractured. The pro-union vote, you're all fighting against each other. There are 400,000 people and more, who voted Conservative in the last general election. If they voted for pro-union parties, you could do some damage to the SNP.
Well, I think the emerging truth in Scotland is that if you want a non-socialist alternative to the nationalists who want to break up our United Kingdom, only the Conservatives can provide that option. And that's why in the recent polls in Scotland, of course the SNP are doing well, but actually the Conservatives are going up. We're a party of the United Kingdom. In fact, we're the only party that stands in every part of the United Kingdom.
Always vote Conservative.
Always vote Conservative.
So, for instance, if you've got a chance to keep Alex Salmond out of Parliament by Conservative voters lending the Lib Dem candidate their votes, you say, no, vote Conservative.
Always vote Conservative.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Let me move on to the issue of Libya and what we heard from Ed Miliband the other day, that somehow British policy in Libya has led or contributed in some part to the crisis we're seeing on the Mediterranean. Do you accept that you really didn't have an end game for Libya after the military campaign? You didn't stand by Libya.
I don't accept that. We did stand by Libya, and what I did as Prime Minister was make sure that the new Libyan Prime Minister got the help and the support he needed. I took him to the G8 summit, which I chaired in Northern Ireland, got him together with Barack Obama, with the leaders of France and Germany and Italy. We all pledged support. We all pledged aid. Britain spent aid money in Libya. We're still working to try and bring that country back together, to get the various different groups into a national unity government. But I accept this hasn't worked. This hasn't been possible yet, but we're working at it. But I would say to people, if you're asking for a different approach, do you mean we should have put boots on the ground, troops in Libya after the end of the conflict? I think that would have actually made matters even worse rather than better. But we need to keep going to form that national unity government.
And what about the problem of the traffickers, the criminal gangs that are involved? I mean, could you see any form of military action taking place against them and British forces being involved?
We discussed in Brussels at the meeting of the European Union potential action against these traffickers. Everything would have to be within international law. You want to see good levels of cooperation. But if we can do things to break up the gangs, to get rid of the boats, to stop the criminals involved, it's not just military action that's being looked at, but also criminal intelligence, the intelligence we have. What more can we do? How can we work with the neighbouring countries to help stabilise them? The truth is there's no one single answer. Search and rescue in the Mediterranean, which the Royal Navy will be taking part of, is one part of it. But if it was just that wouldn't work. You need more.
Now, last question, Prime Minister, about the royal baby expected any time, maybe any hour, any day now. Now, we know the NHS has served your family so very well over the years. It's served so many millions of families. Are you disappointed that the royal family don't use the NHS?
I think it's a total matter of choice for people, what they use and where they have their babies and all the rest of it. All I hope and pray for is that it'll be happy, healthy news for that wonderful couple and for the whole country.
But is there a danger that there is a perception then that the NHS isn't good enough for the royal family?
Well, the NHS is superb, and I've seen that in my own life in so many different ways. But I believe in choice. I believe in people being able to do what they want to do. And as I say, I've only got one thought about the royal baby, which is a happy and healthy arrival.
Indeed. Prime Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Mr. Cameron,
thanks.
Good to see you.